I didn't know there was going to be a quiz.
Oh, it's okay.
And,
you can about 50, 20.
It
seems like
north,
a lot.
It's north of 75.
Oh,
so,
my word. Wow.
Yeah. So that's across 2 pen names. One, I have a secret spicy romance pen name, which is super fun. And then I have my science fiction and solar punk pen name. And you know what? I was corked up for a long time. And when I uncorked my creativity, I kind of went a little crazy.
Welcome, everyone. This is Love Letters to the Future, an interdisciplinary podcast where we talk to people who tell stories. What stories should we get rid of that are old and actually hurt the world we live in? What are the new stories that we should start telling that will help create a better world? We call this the new mythos. Join us. I'd love to introduce you to a very dear and longtime friend, the author Susan Kaye Quinn. Susan has designed aircraft engines and studied global warming. She's gotten her PhD in environmental engineering and now invents cool stuff in books. She's been writing across multiple genres for 15 years, with her latest works focusing on hope punk, solar punk, and the new stories we need to build for a more just and sustainable world. And guess what? She is one of the earliest practitioners within our new Mythos group, and I am delighted to have her with us today. Welcome.
Yay.
I'm super excited to be here and talking about new mythos. Yay.
Yay.
Hi, Susan.
Hello. Super glad to be here.
I'm so glad. We were just saying how it feels like we've met just because we've watched and read each other's work. So we're finally meeting in person.
We have a parasocial relationship already established. But I am excited to have it be more than that.
Exactly. And for those of you who are listening instead of watching, Susan is purple.
Yes. I'm actually an alien. It's true.
So we have our first alien on the show, PJ.
You know, there's always a first time for everything.
Yeah.
So, Susan, what I love about you as a guest is not only are you well acquainted with the new mythos, so we can kind of jump right in, but also you share with Laura a special intersection of being a science and communicator. You're not Laura was really truly a science communicator, but you were doing both engineering for scientific endeavors and you're a fiction author. And I love that you have that perspective of both worlds, which is not that common. Do you think that gives you any kind of special insight into why you were so instantly attracted to the new mythos?
I think it gives me a lot of insight into why we have the old mythos, perhaps.
Well, we have to tear down the old one before we can build something new, and we need to kind of tell our audience why we should want to tear it down in the first place. So all of your life experience probably, drove you, tell that story.
Yeah. Well, PJ said how I'm both a science-based person. I mean, I have a background in engineering and science and also a writer, but those were 2 very distinct segments of my life. I didn't combine them the way that Laura is and doing this fabulous, science comm kind of stuff. And so when I was doing science, it was in the 80s and the 90s as a woman in science, and there were a lot of pressures that people might imagine to not be frivolous, and frivolous meant the arts. And so that was something I packed away pretty strongly so that I could be a successful young woman in science. And eventually left science, raised a family, and kind of had wait a minute, maybe I can unpack some of that creativity that I have just stowed away forever. And so it was really 2 different phases. And it's only, I would say, in the last 10 years maybe that I've tried to bring the 2 back together. And then that was great for a little while until I ran into a wall of the stories that I wanted to tell did not fit with this old mythos. All the stories I'd ever heard my entire life did not prepare me for reality. And also the stories I wanted to tell within that reality, especially as I started writing hope punk and solar punk stories. Those were kind of the answer, my take on what new mythos could look like. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
It does, but I have a kind of a follow-on question to that. So, like, can you tell us specifically, or a story, an example of a time when, one of those things you were talking about, being a woman in science, or the word frivolous I really attach to. I usually, for myself, use the word like, having fun isn't legitimate. You've got to be like serious and uptight and put a stick up your butt. Otherwise, everyone will think that you're illegitimate. So I do like the word frivolous too. So like, paint us a picture or a story of like how that affected you, like personally.
Oh, it was everything from how I talked and reserved my vast vocabulary that I acquired through reading. Well, no, that the engineers don't have that kind of vocabulary. We have a different kind of vocabulary that's very sciencey based and serious. And the writing, of course, technical writing, very like you don't get to like tell a story. Now, this is not true now. I'm talking about 30 years ago.
Oh, boo, it's still true now.
Well, okay, that's really sad to hear. I hate that for us.
I hate it too.
But I feel like it's challenged a lot more. And I think there's a lot of people that don't buy into it, whereas it felt a lot more like the cultural norm when in the 80s and 90s when I was in that sort of environment. I have a middle child who is going to UCLA right now in the sciences. They're in physics, which is like amazing, and I love it. But I went to UCLA and got one of my degrees there, aerospace engineering, and oh my gosh, it is a very different place now. So like literally the same campus is, not perfect. It's got its problems, sure, but the North Campus, South Campus divide is not as strong. And,
I don't think I don't know what that is. Our audience may not know what the North Campus, South Campus divide is.
That's a specific thing at UCLA where South Campus was STEM and North Campus was the arts.
Right. So even geographically, the arts and the sciences are separated.
Yes.
And yeah, that's true. It's like I remember when I was at NASA, I was in DC at headquarters, and the head of the whole science division at NASA walked in, and I had never met her, and she used the term non-scientist, which I hate that term, and I ripped her a new one, and I was like, how dare you use that term? We work at a national laboratory, and if we use that term, us and them, then how are we going to expect people to understand where we're at and participate and encourage? Anyway, so she left, and they were like, did you know who that was? And I was like, no, she used the term non-scientist, and I ripped her a new one. That was the lead scientist at NASA, and I'm like, good, she needs to not say the word non-scientist, but
amazing.
But it is so, like you were saying, indoctrinated into our culture. I thought it was just in people's minds that, people say, I'm not a math person or I'm not a science person. And you're saying that literally on campus, they geographically separated people.
They did. And one of the other indicators, so I'm an engineer. My husband's an engineer. We had 3 children. They were cursed from birth, okay? Like there was no escaping the nerd gene. However, fortunately for my children, I reintegrated a lot of my creative side when they were young. And so I could give them the message, like, don't do as your mother did. You will have a creative side. You will keep that integrated and you will carry it forward. And I'm pleased to say that all 3 of them as adults have their nerdy side and they have their creative side. But I really see it too among their peers because they hang out with the nerdy kids too, right? But those nerdy kids also have creative sides, and they chose schools where that was valued. One of which is CMU, which is here in Pittsburgh, where I am now. And I just fell in love with CMU culture because they strongly wanted you to have both. Like, you weren't really accepted into the university unless you had, both going on, no matter which one was your emphasis. So if you were an artist, they wanted to know that you had some, I don't know, coding background or something. And if you were a physicist, they wanted to know that you played the guitar or something. So like,
that's so interesting. So is that the new mythos? Is that like one of the love letters that you'd like to pass on to the future, is stop splitting ourselves in two and become more whole? Is that
Oh, 100%. I was living that, like I said, when my kids were little, and as they grew up and my career as a writer grew and I started to mentor other writers, that was also my, thing to them. Like, don't feel like you can't go wherever you need to go creatively, and it's okay if you're a nerd too. Like, it's okay if you like gaming or whatever. Like, people had these little boxes that they put themselves in, and I'm like, the invisible walls in your mind are what you need to break first, and then you can go a lot of places.
I love that.
I would love to talk to you about what you see as the old myths in stories that you would like to see gone, and of course we're going to get to what we like to see as the new myths, and your approach to it. But in terms of the old myths, what do you think are tired and not serving us anymore?
Yeah, like they really map one to one. It's almost like, for every old mythos there, I feel like there's a new mythos answer to that. And
yes,
I wrote a whole article about this called Rewriting the Future. It's about hope punk, and I got, I had bullet points, okay? Like the
it's
10
in the show
points.
notes, guys. So
okay, yes.
Take a look.
Can you just tell us what is hope punk?
Sure. It's mostly a vibe. And I would say that a lot of people want it to be a genre, and they will try to pull up some genre examples. And it's communalism, it's radical compassion, it's cooperation. And so like the opposite of that would be, it's not the hero's journey, it's the heroine's journey, which again is not a gender thing, it's a plot structure. So it's not a solo journey, it's the journey of a community. It's not competition and combat, it's cooperation and communalism and compromise. There's a lot of C words in the hope punk.
And cuntiness, how about that? Can you include that?
Only if, you're from certain parts of the world, then okay. It's very much the opposite of what I feel like anyone could tell you. The hero goes out from the kingdom and goes to slay the dragon and then returns home to win the princess's hand. Like, this is like this weird, gross, like misogynistic stereotype.
Like yawn. We're falling asleep.
Right, we're super bored with that, but only because it's been constantly told, that story, endlessly. And, what we want is the heroine to not need the prince, to go out and befriend the dragon, figure out why the dragon has issues and grievances, and we're gonna resolve this for everyone. Also, the king needs to be deposed. We're gonna change.
I love this story.
Right?
Oh my god,
I love this story. I want to hear this story all day long. Right? And,
I do.
But so it really is like a polar opposite, but somehow we get really stuck. Even if we say we're bored, what ends up actually happening, what I'm seeing a lot of now, is not pure hope punk stories or solar punk, and we'll talk about that. It's just the eco cousin of hope punk, but with some special adders onto it. So we're not seeing a pure hope punk story. What we're seeing is mainstream storytellers will rummage around in the hope punk bin and come up with one element. They're like, oh, we've never had a cooperative plot line before. How about if we tried that?
Can you give an example of a story that people might have heard of, something popular?
Yes.
A movie or a book.
Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. Now, I am super disappointed in season 3. So what I am referring to is season 1. Season 1 is classic hope punk mainstream, where they took a OG Star Trek, right? That aesthetic, of and they actually went back to the original characters from like the lore, but they made Captain Pike, his superpower is compassion. And we have like episodes where he literally like makes peace with the enemy by cooking a really good meal. And they're like, okay, we hate you and we're going to keep you in that cage. But what do you mean you know how to cook? Because we would like we're hungry and we're space pirates and we haven't had a good meal in a really long time. So that is his mechanism for solving the conflict, as opposed to, I don't know, breaking down the jail cells or tricking someone or, seducing the computer. I don't know. But some other mechanism, that actually might be a little heroine's journey to seduce the computer. But cooking is so classic, like everybody needs to eat. We can meet you at the common humanity place, even though you're an alien or whatever. And they did that through the whole first season. It was glorious. I love it so much.
Oh, such a good example. I love that.
Another example, just to throw it out there while you're thinking about your next question for me, because like we have so many things to cover. But I really like Doctor Who as an example, because he and whoever the character is, this is true throughout all the Doctor Who's. His superpowers are
his or hers. I think there's a female Doctor Who
absolutely.
now. Yeah.
His or hers superpowers are a screwdriver and compassion. And so, like, once again, it's we're using our empathy to figure out how to solve the crisis rather than going in with guns and fists. And we're using our cleverness. That's what the screwdriver is. Like, I can fix anything with the sonic screwdriver. Cleverness and empathy. And those are super Hope Punk. So it's not like Hope Punk is really new. And in fact, there are a lot of stories that we tell all the time, but we take them less seriously. They're frivolous, right? They're buddy comedies. They're romance. They're any kind of comedy, really. They're little adventures that are a little band of people that go out and just have a good time and don't like go out and burn down the hillside. Murderbot, which is new, has a great, here is a sentient robot who's like a killer robot and is like broken his governor's module, but all he really wants to do is like watch his shows on, the space Netflix. And his like little friends that he's like hanging out with to try to stay undercover are all a bunch of hippies. And they all like just, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. It's so great. And it's very much a classic Hope Punk, partial, all right, because there's still some elements of Murderbot that are very traditional storytelling.
One of the things you touch on that I also absolutely agree with, and you and I have had conversations about this, is that we think a lot about old mythos and new mythos as about content. Who are our protagonists, antagonists? What is the situation or plot that turns the story? But you and I talk a lot about structure. All stories have structure, and that's the scaffolding on which you hang your plot, the events through your story. And there isn't one kind of structure. In the West, we tend to use one kind of structure.
You want to say what that is for people who may not know?
It's called Aristotelian three-act structure. The Greeks, it's so old, the ancient Greeks came up with it. So I'd love to hear you talk about...
But wait, tell people what is, because not everybody may know what the Aristotelian... Just really
correct.
Quickly, first, second, third act.
First act is your establishing incident, what has changed in the character's world that needs to be rectified. The second act is the growth and development of the obstacles that are stopping the character from accomplishing their goal. And the third act is the climax and denouement, where they have the biggest obstacle. Will they succeed? And they do, usually, and out. And the denouement can be as short as the reaction shot on the hero's or heroine's face going, I did it. and roll credits.
Everything's resolved.
Everything's resolved. And I know personally for me, one of the big issues I have is that's not reality. And you even said this earlier, Susan, you know, that stories need to have a certain reflection on how the world and life actually works. And instead, what these stories often do is they bring you back to some kind of status quo. Certainly superhero genre is most famous for this, where if it's not a cliffhanger, it eventually takes you back to the world as it was before the story started, as though that's the good thing. As though that's desirable, and as though that actually is reality.
And we're suffering through that mindset right now. People are modeling that myth because they've heard it over and over and over again, which is why we need a new mythos in the first place.
Exactly. So, Susan, I'd love to hear you talk about your thoughts about structure in terms of how can we tell stories differently, not just what they're about, but how the mechanism of telling them changes.
I think it's so important, and I have so many thoughts about it. I'm trying to like wrangle them in my head. So there's an obvious thing of just get away from Western imperialistic storytelling, which is basically like the structure of why it's okay to go out and, you know, invade and conquer, and that is just structurally that's a problem. Okay, so
because it at its foundation is the us and them, bad and good. Which,
right.
You know,
right.
is that 3-story structure that you just described. Okay, so the fundamental underlying
assumptions, like the frame that we have. So a good way to just at least see the frame, because sometimes it's really hard to even see the frame, is to go and look at Western storytelling. And Henry Lean has a book out that I cannot recall the title off the top of my head. Somebody else has it. But it is about 4-act structure. So it's like, you know, thing happens in the world, another thing happens in the world, big twist, and then like it reveals that there's a completely different thing that was happening in the world. and it brings it all together. And so that's a very different structure, and it's not an individual going out and finding their deepest power, which is a part of the hero's journey, but is also like imperialism is like go out and prove yourself to, you know, and bring back the spoils. That sort of storytelling is deeply embedded in our culture. It's rugged individualism. It's how can you go and it's all about you. It's all about you, and like you got to just get rid of everybody that's holding you back, right?
Those are your enemies.
Those are your enemies. Even the people who love you are inadvertently holding you back, and you've got to shed all, you know, connections, break all your connections to everyone. That's the only way you can really be your true self. And it's like, okay, that's a story. But there are other stories, like where we start out with a relatively, you know, intact world where we have relationships with people that we love, and then it gets broken by, you know, this is the heroine's journey that I'm describing. It gets broken because someone dies or is kidnapped or harmed, and now you're on a quest, but the quest is not you. Like, you cannot possibly solve this on your own. You need friends and allies. You need to build a team. You need to, you know, find who the people are that caused the harm and like negotiate with them and find out how can we solve the larger problem and basically build civilization in a way that everybody gets what they need. And that's like crazy different story than what we normally tell. So I like that. I like heroine's journey. I like Eastern, you know, different kinds of structures.
Can I just add 1 second? The Asian 4-act structure you're referring to is Kisho Tenketsu, which actually each syllable demarks each of the acts. I just needed to add that.
There's that, you know, those sort of very different structures. But when I'm trying to teach people about how you can have different storytelling, I don't feel like you have to go completely to a different structure, but you need to challenge where the structure is slipping in, where it's hero's journey, and like, do we really need to do that? How about let's think about an alternate way? And I do want to say, like, a lot of this, I'm not the expert, I've been spending a lot of time on it, but there are no experts in this because this is something that's being co-created in our world right now.
Maybe that's part of the story, is not necessarily having experts, and that's the old mythos, and the new mythos is more open and experimental and not I know everything and I'm,
Welcome to Love Letters to the Future.
Yes, I love it. That is exactly it. And whenever I'm like doing something in storytelling or, working with a community or doing like this class that I'm setting up to teach about writing solar punk, I just put it out there and I said, you know what, I'm going to have a class on writing solar punk. If you're interested, sign up. So people sign up to get the info. Right? And then a little bit I'd come back there and I said, okay, now tell me what the class is about. Because I want to hear, I didn't really tell you anything. All I said was that I was going to like teach a writing class about solar punk. Now these are people on social media who hear me talk all the time. So they're in my universe of, progressive ideas and different storytelling, and maybe have even read some of my works. But I didn't actually tell them what the class was, and so I said, I need you to tell me what that means to you and what you're looking for, so that I can meet your needs as storytellers, because you're all storytellers, and I'm trying to help you break your old mythos habits and tell new mythos stories. Let's talk about it and decide collectively. And I'm getting all these really great responses, and they're kind of, 3 different camps of things that people are looking for, and I will absolutely tailor my class to what people need.
But that's so important, because like we talk about it in the communication field as like this deficit model of learning, where it's like the teacher knows everything and the students know nothing and their heads are empty and it's your job to shove stuff in. Of course, that doesn't work at all. And what really works is where it's a cooperative, where you actually listen first. And that's not just in educational learning, that's just in communication. It always helps if you listen first.
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's part of the storytelling is listening first.
It is, but also I find that people are like, no, just tell me the answer. I just want the answer.
Because they're used to the old, but yeah.
Right. See, that's like the first habit you have to break is that like, no, we're co-creating this. So like if you come up with an idea that's different, wonderful, fantastic. You've just added to the canon. All right. We're all building the canon together. And I want to see what you got, because like, frankly, we need a million minds working on this. And I wanted to bring up The Great Derangement by Amitav Ghosh, came out in 2016, and he talks extensively about how literature, with a capital L, is missing the mark or failing to do the imaginative work to imagine the climate crisis and our way out of it. And part of the problem is Western imperialistic storytelling structures. Part of it is just like he has a whole section where he talks about like the novel itself is a problem but what he really means is the structure of Western storytelling of novels. I think the novel as a container, as Ursula K. Le Guin would say, the carrier bag theory of fiction, where she goes in about how it's not the story of the spear, it's the story of the bag that's gathering the oats and crushing the oats and making community with that. She was one of the earlier pioneers in having different structure, not just different. She's known for having different stories, but she also really understood structure as a storytelling mechanism.
So one thing PJ didn't mention when she introduced you was you've got dozens of books. How many books have you written, Susan?
I didn't know there was going to be a quiz.
Oh, it's okay. And, you can about 50, 20. It seems like a lot.
It's north of 75.
Oh, my word. Wow.
Yeah. So that's across 2 pen names. One, I have a secret spicy romance pen name, which is super fun. And then I have my science fiction and solar punk pen name. And you know what? I was corked up for a long time. And when I uncorked my creativity, I kind of went a little crazy and was one of those compulsive writing people that is like, I just have to write all the time, which is part of why I'm prolific, but also is part of why I, learned quickly about how to do this thing and blazed ahead, and then like ran into a wall where I like couldn't tell the stories I wanted to tell anymore. I was on a bit of an accelerated path because I was just writing so much. And I'm thankful for that. I sort of lucked into, kind of doing it the right way to move along and get to like the new Mythos problem quicker probably than the average person would.
From sheer 10,000 hours. So do many of your books follow a different form then?
The ones that are like, there's one series in my science fiction that is explicitly hope punk, and then all of my solar punk works follow a different structure, and some very different structures. Like I was experimenting around with a lot of my short fiction to go like, okay, I wrote a 4-book novel series of solar punk using very different structure, but then I was like, okay, I figured that out. Now, like, what else can I do with it? Like, I wanted to map out the space with these short stories, and short stories you can turn around faster, right? So I was like, let's try one of these ones. Let's try over here. and that was super cool and very informative. Now I'm back to writing novels, and I'm writing a crazy philosophical, arty literature. I don't even know what it is. Some crazy thing I'm writing now.
Well, before you go any further, you've explained what hope punk is, but now I think we need to, so the listeners can follow along, what specifically is solar punk.
So solar punk is like you take all that compassion and cooperation and community and apply it to near future climate crisis situations. So like almost all of our climate fiction is disaster focused, far future.
They call it like disaster porn.
It is.
Apocalypse porn. Yeah.
It's depressing as hell. And it's also like reinforces our passivity in the climate crisis. So if we want people to engage in the climate crisis, they have to have like some idea that it's possible to do something. And we have just like beat narratives into people's heads that it's all impossible, or this terrible apocalypse is going to happen, or it's really long time away and it's not going to affect you, and just a bunch of bad narratives that disempower people. So for me, solar punk is about empowering people. It's explicitly rejecting the brutality of our world today and the idea that we're doomed. We are not doomed. We have agency, and we made this mess. We can clean it up. And it will take a lot to clean it up. And that is what the stories are about. Is like, how do you fight through the patriarchy, the capitalism, the broligarchs? So like, we have to fight all these battles to have a more just and sustainable world. And so I am very captured by that storytelling space right now, and how to tell those stories so that when somebody gets to the end of reading one of these either short stories or novels or series, I want them to go, okay, I can do something now. Like, it opens up the possibilities. Not that I'm not prescribing what the future is going to be. I can't predict any more than anyone else. But as I was just telling a friend, I said, these stories are not meant to be a recipe book. They're meant to show possibilities and make you believe that those possibilities are actually possible. Now you go out and figure out how to make them happen.
Well, hopefully it's an entertaining story, too, because if it was just recipe book, prescriptive, do this, 10 easy ways to fix the climate. I mean, there are those books, and we're probably going to have some of the people who write those books on our show, but I think narrative storytelling has the element of entertainment in it that a prescriptive book doesn't.
I run a solar punk book club, and we had a book recently that I will leave unnamed, but it was a recipe book, and it was almost like a fictionalized manifesto. And I was like, okay, but that's all great and all, but you're not using the power of fiction. The power of fiction is exactly what you say, not just entertainment, because entertainment is the glossy word we give to the thing that draws us in to human endeavors and conflicts and triumphs and all of that emotional storytelling power. You have to personify the struggle, and like, oh my God, we're all struggling with it. It shouldn't be hard to personalize the climate struggle, okay? Because like so many people are experiencing it, but somehow we've told this meta narrative that, oh, it's boring. It won't be a very good story. Oh, really? Like, okay, let's go down to like the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and tell me you can't find any compelling stories there. Come on.
Every work of storytelling, I don't care what it is, fiction, nonfiction, not only has to capture your audience, but it does provide a roadmap to problem solving. Every story in human history has presented a problem, an issue, an obstacle, and demonstrates through character and action how to overcome that obstacle. And this is all the way back to Australopithecus on the savannah teaching each other that if they see a lion, run up the tree. These are the stories that.
But it would work better if they say, PJ saw the lion, ran up the tree, and she lived, right?
So
makes a better story.
When you sit around the campfire relating your day.
Yeah, oh my God, the lion that I saw, and I ran up the tree.
Big teeth and the big eyes, and they're all the things that we are the tropes of storytelling. I mean, I know for a fact that's the reason why I wanted to start this new Mythos project, because what I was seeing was all of these really well-told, entertaining, very popular stories.
Such as?
Harry Potter. So here you have a big bad and his army of baddies in Voldemort. And once Voldemort and the bad guys are vanquished, it literally ends standing in the rubble of Hogwarts. What next? What's stopping a wannabe Voldemort to come forward and pick up the bad guy baton and still make life hell? Why do we think it's going to end well when we don't have a sense of how they're going to rebuild society, their society, afterwards? But this is how almost all of this kind of fiction works. And we know it from, obviously, superhero tropes. We know it from all kinds of fantasy, science fiction. We know it from any kind of fiction. And there's that sense that, at that tiny short denouement, boop, and out, that somehow it's all going to be okay. How's it going to be okay? I don't see a roadmap for a better world. Everyone laughs at Lord of the Rings because there's 9 endings. And it's even funnier when you see it in the movies, because we're so used to, programmed in the movies, to have the tiny denouement and roll to credits. So when you see all the endings, how each character's story or world, subworlds, the elves, the dwarves, whatever, wraps up. And then he, of course, makes the fabulous twist. You think it's just the wrap up of everybody's stories, but then the Shire is attacked. The hobbits are attacked. And what Tolkien is telling you is, hey, I lived through 2 world wars. Guess what? The rebuild is more important than what you just went through, because you're still vulnerable.
And that is exactly the story that I personally need to hear that. And so I think it's important. Say it again, or I'll say it again, and we can all say it again. The rebuild after the destruction, or the rebuild is more important.
The rebuild for the happily ever after is more important than the vanquishing of the villain, because if Tolkien, having lived through 2 world wars before he published his novel, learned, and he was a soldier in World War I, if he learned anything watching Europe fall twice, he learned that if you don't clean up your mess right the first time, you're going to have a second time. That's what the attack on the Shire is about. It's about, you know what? We didn't really get rid of the bad guys, and we had to fight a second world war. We actually created the conditions for a second world war to occur because we were idiots. And this is the kind of thing when I talk about roadmaps that inspire people. There's a reason why Lord of the Rings is so inspiring. It's inspiring because people see how individuals can matter, but also how they have to take responsibility. And if you're willing to take responsibility, not just for the vanquishing, but for the aftermath,
The rebuilding.
then good things are possible.
Well, yeah, we've got to look forward to the rebuilding. That's for sure. Even though we're not done with the falling down yet.
We're not done with the falling down, and there will be so much rebuilding. It will probably outlast my lifetime. But one of the elements of Hope Punk that I identify in that article was also that this idea that the struggle never ends. So this idea that there is an ending, there hopefully is no ending to human civilization. Like, we hopefully will keep going, and there's not ever going to be a nirvana, and there's not ever going to be utopia. We're always going to have to struggle to build a better world and keep it, right? And not lose it again because we forgot or we got tired or whatever. And this doesn't mean, this is why the joy and the compassion is part of it, because you can't build a world if it's like, well, these people have to not be part of it and then we can all be great, like, no, that's not how that works. Everybody has to be part of it.
Sure. So what do you do in the future? This is a real question. I really want to know. So a certain percentage of the human population is a sociopath or a psychopath. So maybe those two are the same things. So if we know our society, and there's if 10% of the population is sociopath, like much greater percent of CEOs, than the general public, right? So what do we do in a future society with the sociopaths?
Well, I would start with not giving them money and power. I mean, that would be a good first step.
But they're so good at getting it with their flattery and their manipulation.
Well, if they are, then you have to build mechanisms to counter that.
Or teach people not to reward that. I mean, I think we are rewarding people for that type of behavior. We're rewarding people for aggression. We're rewarding people for speed.
I think the most important part is being able to recognize them. Because what always stuns me is how many people don't see a psychopath standing right in front of them. And, it's funny. I only learned this having ADHD and studying about ADHD, but it turns out one of the superpowers of having ADHD is you have hypervigilance and you have a crazy high level of pattern recognition. So the combination of those two means once you recognize the pattern of a dark triad or tetrad, so I'll explain because Laura will be asking me that next. Dark triad.
Thank you. You get as you know me.
The dark triad is Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism. And most people add a tetrad, and that's what they call everyday sadism. So not sadism in the Marquis de Sade sense of sadism. Someone with everyday sadism are internet trolls. They really like watching people squirm and hurt people, and they get off on it. They get joy from it. If we can learn to recognize dark triad or tetrad people, like the ADHD community can. If I could teach everybody, maybe that's my next job. Maybe I should teach everybody how to...
You don't have to teach people. Maybe if we're in a collaborative society, like I'd be happy if, it's kind of like you walk in front and warn me where they are.
Right, exactly. And I've done that so many times in my life. I mean, I'll be watching something, like a congressional...
Hearing,
thank you. And I'll go, oh, well, he's lying. It's like a neon. You can't see it. Like, you can't see the tells. It's physical tells. It's like you don't want to, I'm not a good card player, but I could sit at the table and tell you who's bluffing.
That's so wild. That is a superpower.
This is the irony, is stories teach us about people. We have empathy for characters when we read a story, but even the characters who aren't necessarily the good guys. I mean, I know Susan does this too, where you want a complex character. You want somebody who, they're not a good person, they're a bad guy, they're a villain, but you want to at least have a hook into why. Why are they like that?
We do want to have a hook. And the unfortunate thing is that we don't always have hooks in reality. So we can't always see in reality what the, hook is. And so we give like automatic sympathy to characters that in reality that we shouldn't. So I still go back to the structure. I 100% agree that we need a psychopathic indicator to help us identify who the problematic individuals are.
That's the protagonist amongst the protagonists of your next novel.
Yes, absolutely. So, because everybody has a place in the society, and that would be a really key role, but not everybody's going to have that power. So we need structural ways and sort of like a collective wisdom, which I kind of think of like new mythos as being like a collective wisdom. And really like the old mythos, I don't know if wisdom's the right word, but it's the collective cultural norm that we established to justify what we were doing, okay? In the rise of capitalism and imperialism and the whole shebang, we need a cultural wisdom to survive the result of that, to unwind that and find a way to be sustainable in this world before we destroy it and ourselves, because we are part of the world, right? Like, it's not like, well, we could destroy the world, but I'll be fine. Like, it doesn't work that way. So when I say that we have, I feel like culture is encoded wisdom, and our technology and our runaway capitalism has just run ahead, and we don't have the culture. So we're having to catch up. But the good news is that the same problem is everywhere. And so, and I told PJ I would use this metaphor, like the mycelial network that is everywhere underground, connects everything together, is like vital to life on Earth. Everywhere, we have people coming to this realization that the old mythos doesn't work. We need a new mythos, a new way of living, of telling stories. And when you see like an actual new mythos story pop up, that's like the mushroom that pops up and is super visible and encoding, but it's all underground, and the cultural change is already happening. We're just getting indicators here and there. Now, the cultural breakdown is also happening, of course, but it's an action reaction. See if I can say that properly. People are, for all of the rise in fascism and the breakdown of society, there is a reaction to that says no, resist, but also, wow, we need to do something very different here. And people are doing it. And they're not waiting for our leaders to tell them what it is. They're not even waiting for the stories. I have so many people coming to me and they're like, I want to make a little solar punk story where like I can build my regenerative farm but I need more. Like, I don't understand, like I have the idea, I have the impulse, but I don't know where to go with it. And this is where we can work together, collectively help each other. So every story that actually gets out there, people can learn from and then build on. And that's how we build that new mythos.
So interesting.
The entire leadership concept is taught in such an old mythic way that it's hierarchical, that it's about power, as opposed to in a new mythos way with cooperation, and everybody's got their abilities and powers and things to do, which is the actual reality of how stuff gets done, right? Shit gets done because different people have different skills and do their best work that way. But, we see this in the breakdown of all of our political systems around the world, because they're all buying into that old mythos, that old story, not realizing why it's not working for them anymore.
I hate rugged individualism. That's like my least favorite story, because like we're so interdependent. We are so interdependent. The water that comes from the tap, the electricity that's in our walls.
The part of the new mythos is seeing the complexity that was always there, but our stories never revealed it, and our technology didn't until the internet. The internet revealed complexity to people for the first time. And I look at people like Susan telling these stories and working with others to create these stories as a very encouraging groundswell of, the change we all know it needs to happen. And now each person is taking it upon themselves to be that change.
Collectively.
They really are. And I will share an example of that just walked into my life here recently. A person who is local to me in Pittsburgh, he's a writer, among other things, and he joined my Solar Punk Discord. I didn't know this guy from Adam, but he announces that he's got a novel that he's going to self-publish because a lot of mainstream publishers in Hollywood, they're not telling these stories, okay? It's self-publishing, it's short fiction, it's in the underground still. And so I'm like, fantastic, you have a solar punk novel. Do you have any idea how rare those are? Give it to me. So he's like,
Give it to me now.
Give it to me. And so he's like, well, I'm going to have a launch party and you're in Pittsburgh. Why don't you come to my intentional living home? And I'm like, back up and tell me more about that intentional living home. What? And so I go to his party. There's a whole story to it, but basically he and a group of friends built a custom house to be their intentional living space. And they've had some alumni. People have moved out and other people have moved in. They currently have a person in artistic residence in one of their empty rooms. And they have a whole maker space in the basement where they just do their making stuff. And I got to talk to these people and I'm like, I need to just sit down with you and interview you about this co-housing living situation that you're doing, because this is the future.
Absolutely. A maker space. Instead of scrolling on the phone, I want a maker space, or go to somebody's house with a maker space. Because I think, aren't we all hitting a max with the phone scrolling and the digital thing and the staring? And especially with now we're all meeting on Zoom all the time, and everything's remote and nothing's in person. And it's like the idea of having a maker space. Every neighborhood needs a maker space.
Absolutely agree.
I agree.
How do we even find the first, one when you live in a small house and everybody else has a small house?
The good news is that almost every neighborhood does have a maker space that people communally come to and pull their resources for. You just don't know about it because you never knew it was a possibility. But if you go look right now, I'd be willing to bet you $1 that you have a maker space.
$1. A whole dollar.
A whole dollar on whether that's how confident. No, I am very confident that you will be able to find one. And that's one of the other...
so I'm just going to say to all the audience people who are listening right now, we're not offering you $1.
No, this is Laura and I have a bet. That is it.
No, I'm teasing. What we're offering you is to also go find your maker space in your neighborhood. I'd love to hear, that wouldn't that be fun if people could write in and tell us that they found a maker space, and that would be worth more than all the money in the world.
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Talk about where to find your people, right? If you want, loneliness is our epidemic. Connection is what we need.
I would love to be able to find my people. I think I found sociopaths.
They're easy to find. But it's hard to find the people that are good.
Well, my therapist says that, I'm quirky and not mainstream, and so I get punished by that. Peach laughing because so is she, and I'm sure you are too, Susan. So, society wants you to be a certain way, and if you're not, you either fake it and are miserable on the inside, or you can't fake it, and then there's a lot of rejection and stuff. Maybe that's part of the solar punk story, is the search for finding your tribe.
Absolutely.
It definitely is, but also look at, step back for a second. Laura, you started a TikTok that attracted all kinds of people. And Susan created her stories, and she's wildly successful. And the world actually loves the quirky
people.
And the quirky people. They love the quirky people.
We're loved. I'm just alone in my house being loved by people I don't know.
Well, okay, wait. No, I want to talk about that because that is very astute, that you can be well loved by the masses but alone in your house. And
Yes.
we need to, like, being well loved by the masses is wonderful. I'm not want to say anything bad about that because you're giving. You're giving to all these people. You've enriched all those lives. But you need enrichment too, right? You need somebody who's going to come feed your space.
That'd be
and
great.
be equals in, feeding each other. And that's the hard part for us, is to find those equals who are our people. And you can find them online. I think that's possible. I just went on a 2-month, 9,000-mile road trip across the U.S. and Canada. And I was doing many things during this trip with my EV. But one of the things was going and meeting all these people that I knew only online.
I love this story.
And I said, hey, I want to go. I'm going to be in Albuquerque for a day. Let's have dinner. And they're like, yes.
So you've presumed, because you're very prolific in essays and short stories, and you have a podcast, I'm presuming that there's stories of this, of this journey. Or there will be. There will be.
There will be. I'm still processing because there was so much to it, Laura. Like I was visiting libraries. I've got my public library defender shirt on. I don't know if people can see that.
She's wearing a public library defender shirt. You'll just have to trust us because we're not lying associate. PJ, you can tell that PJ's good at feeling and people are lying.
Amazing. So I was doing much, and I haven't really explicitly talked about it because I was too busy living it, first of all, but it also will inform everything that I do. I will be carrying that journey forward with me and all the people I met, all the places I saw for, the rest of my life, basically. But I wanted to say that specifically that I went and intentionally met people that I only knew online so that I could deepen those relationships.
That's such a good idea. That is such a good idea. Road trip.
Oh, it was so great. It was so great.
And you just stayed in different hotels or stayed with friends?
I could write some stories about some of the couches I crashed on.
Some great content.
The really sketchy hotels that I stayed in.
I'm going to steal that idea. I'm going to totally steal that idea. Road trip to meet my community.
And I took some little, trial road trips that were not 9,000 miles. That wasn't the first one I did. Just to more closer areas to visit friends. So, if you've got some friends, go visit them. What's stopping you, right? Now, I must say I have, a lot of privilege in that I was able to fund this. I was able to take 2 months of my life to just go on the road.
You don't have brown skin, so you're not going to be picked up by ICE.
Exactly. And even so, I was concerned about crossing the border.
And you're not a young woman who may or may not be pregnant, so you're not going to be picked up by the menstruation police or whoever the fuck they are now.
Right. I mean, there's so many ways where I'm this invisible older woman that I can just go do stuff, and people's like, she's probably harmless.
It's up to going to be the invisible older women and the black women, really, who are going to be the heroines.
Well, and I didn't need to be a heroine. What I was going to do was absorb and meet and connect. That was what the whole trip was about, and I feel like I did it in spades. And you don't have to go far to do that. You can do that in your own community. Just look and see where the makerspace is or where your people are and get out there and do stuff.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's actually the moral of this episode. Hey, everyone, get out there and do stuff.
Well, it's funny because it's like PJ and she writes, the nonfiction novels and stories, and I've only ever written nonfiction. And it sounds to me like you're living what's called a writer life, So somebody who lives a writer life has to have experiences, because otherwise, what the hell are you going to write about?
Exactly.
So maybe I'll pull you over into the nonfiction side, or you can fictionalize, use the true stories to inspire.
Or I will pull you over into the fiction side, because part of my evil plan is to recruit all these highly intelligent science people who understand all the science and teach them how to do the fictionalized, use the power of fiction to enliven those stories and bring them to people because they need them.
That's so interesting. Well, I mean, that's a whole nother episode where we
Yes.
could talk about, because I'm very attached to I mean, there's no fiction I could write that would be more interesting than the truth. The truth blows me away every day.
So I won't be able to succeed, but still,
I don't want to fight you on that.
you stay where you are doing your awesome work. That is
I think we
perfect.
need it all. We
Yes.
need both. We need both. We need true stories about humans who are doing the work, and then we need, futurist stories that can inspire people to do the future work.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I wrote a whole podcast about, like, why do we write these stories? And there was a study that showed there were certain narratives that moved people to action in the climate crisis. And one of them was just seeing people doing the work and being successful, like in real life, and a fiction models that, but like we have so many in real life stories. Just tell them, get them out there. And because people are like, oh, it never works. Oh, you can't try because nothing will ever work. And it's like, it works all the time. Like, let's tell those stories.
Moral of the story, everybody, get writing, get talking, get telling. We need better stories.
Build the new mythos.
Susan, thank you so much. You were as awesome as I knew you would be.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is so great. And I love that you are doing this. Like, the new mythos needs to happen. Let's make it. Do it.
It is happening. You're so easy to talk to. My gosh.
So thank you so much, everyone. We hope you join us again soon and keep telling those better stories. Bye-bye.